And you're back with us after the break on our episode on household budget planning. And planning is the key word there, isn't it, Taridu, as we were speaking earlier?
Absolutely.
And when you take a family, there are children involved. And I think there is a notion in Sri Lanka that children shouldn't be taken into the planning side of it, and it's mostly parents who take it up, whereas in Western countries we see that children are sometimes given allowances, they're encouraged to plan their own budget, from maybe the age of 10 or 12. So do you think that that model could work in Sri Lanka, where children are also involved in the budgeting of the household and at a small level?
Absolutely. Sometimes the problem is that they don't get the kids involved, but if any family with kids will tell you that kids do end up being a significant part of their budget. So sometimes it's a mistake not to get them involved. So it's always encouraged to get them involved, especially encourage them to tell them what their expenses are, at the beginning of the month or of the year, so that it's easier to plan. And along with kids, especially when you have kids, they have their goals, their dreams. They want to go on their vacation during the school vacation time. So especially if you're doing something like that, when those expenses come in, that's when parents have to be especially smart in terms of their financial planning. For example, you have a situation where you need to take your kids on a holiday, and there are three main holiday seasons in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And if a parent is smart, they will always look at, okay, when we go on a holiday, yes, we need to stay in a hotel or in a resort sometimes. And that's the case, you get lots of resorts and hotels, where they have their hotels in different parts of the country, and they have these club memberships, right? So that if you are a part of it, patronizing it continuously, you actually get discounts, you get free nights, right? So that's being smart. It's not about being stingy and saying, no holiday, recession, austerity, no, right? But it's about being smart. It's about taking that effort to plan that bit, which is quite important, I would say. And also nowadays, even young kids, they learn computing in school, and they are quite good with Excel, right? And it's just a matter, even for an adult, I would say you were asking me, what sort of a financial modeling tool is good, right? And sometimes you get adults, trying to spend all their time buying expensive personal finance management softwares. But it's not the software, it's you and your financial discipline, right? Excel is perfectly fine as a normal software to use for your daily planning, right, or your monthly or annual planning. And sometimes you can get the kids involved, right? They could maintain their own, and it would begin with maybe giving an allowance where the kid knows, okay, this is how much I'm going to get at the beginning of the month for that entire month, and get them used to planning for it. Especially an entrepreneurial family, the worst thing they can do is, just giving any amount of money that they want. Make them work for their money. Them work for that. That's very important.
So this actually prepares them to the real world as well.
Exactly.
At the same time.
And not only for the real world, Jason, in fact, it even prepares them to take up their own family business, right? A lot of times we see the first generation, second generation, they actually save their money, right, and they pass it on to the next generations, but that they end up actually spending that. We can even see that in countries like China now.
Oh, I see.
And with that trend globally, Amaya, a lot of dangerous repercussions and consequences come. Now, for example, if you take, our generation, we can be considered actually quite lucky, and I'm sure you two also fit into my generation. So I'm
we're okay with being in the same generation.
We are quite lucky because in most of our cases, our parents have saved something for us, right? They pass on something, but then as the more younger generations, the more globalized generations with the bigger aspirations, as they begin to the habit of spending more than what they get due to lack of financial planning, they move away from saving. They don't have any assets, they don't have any lands, they don't have any bank balances. And then you see this in countries like US, where it came to a point where your house was your wealth, right? Today you ask a Sri Lankan adult, so what is your wealth? He'll be thinking about the bank balance, he will be thinking about, maybe the car maybe, but he will not think about his household value and say, this is also an asset of mine.
They consider more liquid assets.
Exactly, more liquid assets, exactly. So, as the generations get into more spending, they will begin to consider the house is everything, right? And I buy my house prices are going up in value, So if there's an emergency later on, you know what, if I need to spend for something, fine, I'll sell off the house, I'll make a profit out of it, and I will move into a more smaller apartment then, and you know what, the money I need I will have. But the thing is, sometimes physical asset value could be land, it could be even houses, right? They keep on, you know, they're a bubble, right? They are not a ladder per se, right? You know, they are not, the prices won't go up and then come down gradually. They're a bubble. It keeps growing, growing, growing. And then all of a sudden, you know what happens to a soap bubble when you hit it hard, right?
Correct.
Then there's nothing. It disappears and there's absolutely nothing, right? So what happens is, if you don't get the kids involved at a smaller age, you have a full generation of kids who are quite irresponsible with their financial planning, and then they end up being the population of the country, and then you know they begin to move away from cash or liquid assets, as you said, and move into more physical assets, especially physical assets in the sense, I do understand a family living in a house and then buying a separate land to sell it later, but if the house you live is everything you got, and if the house value comes down, you virtually got nothing.
And on that note, I mean, I have a friend actually who gave me this piece of advice, you know, whatever you do, don't buy anything, rent it. And is that a valid piece of advice, especially when it comes to real estate and things like that? Is it better to own the house or to rent it?
Are you talking in terms of your own house, or
yeah, if it's if
in
a
terms
family,
of living?
yes,
in terms of living.
in terms of living here in Sri Lanka especially.
Well, yes, no, you know, I mean, the modern generation, in fact, is called the rent generation, right? Because you know they are, it's all about renting. You know, you take foreign countries, even the cars you can rent. You know, for that moment where you want when you walk out, there is a car outside your house. You open that with your iPhone, right, and you go get down and go. By the time you move out, you know, after that car is no longer yours, and you know your credit card is charged for that distance. But I mean, a person without any asset for him or herself is virtually, I would say, has nowhere to go. What if that, let's say you rent a house, what if that landlord wants it back, right? Or let's say you rent a car only, what if that car rental company closes down? You are left with nothing, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so I wouldn't quite agree with that.
The reasoning behind was that you would save more money to invest somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, but you need to invest, that's true, but also at the same time, being a person, to have a stability, you need to have some amount of assets. I mean, minimum I would say maybe a house and a vehicle, right? But you know, it's not exactly about renting everything or investing everything. No, it's about being smart. For example, invest and buy a car, that's all right, right? You know what, spend and buy a car. But let's say in a place like Sri Lanka, if somebody tells me, you know what, I bought a car, no, it's good. You know, you need a mode of transport, and public transportation would not be at the level that a particular mid to high end executive or a business person would expect. So yeah, it makes sense. But if that person tells me, oh, you know what, I also spent another 10,000 or 15,000 and bought a GPS system, right? I actually don't think that's necessary in Sri Lanka, right? Because we got the best free GPS system the whole world could actually offer, right? I mean, our people are so hospitable, just enough of putting on the shutter and asking, you know what, where is it? Because to be frank, on my way here, Jason, this is the first time I'm coming to this studio, and I actually didn't know where exactly it was, and I just had to put my shutter on and ask a guy in a bike, in a push bike, you know, where exactly is it, and he took all the trouble to in fact come along with my vehicle and show me the direction, this is where I need to turn. And I don't think any GPS system actually can do that service for you. It's like GPS in 3D. But you know, be smart, right? You know, every rupee, every cent counts, right? So be smart, plan well, right? And you know, make sure, like I said, going back to the beginning, what you plan to spend should be covered with what you get. So it's a juggle. It's a juggle. Sometimes you have unexpected expenses. You know, be careful with that. Have allowances for that, and always make sure that you spend for what is necessary, not for what you want. It's quite important.
Right. One of the main topics here in Sri Lanka is debt. A lot of people are in debt. For example, if I'm in debt, what can I do to reduce my debt?
Right. First, I mean, it's most probably that you had taken off debt in certain chunks. Let's say maybe a 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 in chunks, right? Target the smaller amounts first, right? But it's easier to pay, right? Because anything we do, Jason, right? I mean, I'm a big fan of Robin Sharma, and one thing that he has actually said is that anything new actually takes 20 to 21 days to get into that mood. So if you had taken a lot of debt, right, you are looking at a person who has actually got, I'm sure this is a totally assumption, you are looking at a person who has got into a habit of, you know, spending more than what you actually get as income.
Yeah.
So first it begins with changing that habit. All right. So in order to do that, you need to first get into the habit of, you know what, saving more than what you spend. So within those 21 days, you know, in that initial period, if you target the smaller amounts, right, and you pay it off, you pay it back, then you get that motivation. You know, I can pay it off, I can pay back my debt, right? And so start with the smaller amounts, right? And again, look at, you know, for what are you spending. Sometimes you actually, it's very surprising. Sometimes people long time ago, they have subscribed for what, some small $2, $3 monthly newsletter or something, and they're actually no longer even reading it, but without them knowing, they're actually still being charged. So next time the credit card bill comes, take a better look at it, right? There could be something that happens without you actually knowing that you are spending for it. And at the same time, as you get your income, right, make debt repayment a priority and not a minority item in your agenda. Right? That helps a lot. And also, the best way to come out of credit is not further, falling further into credit, right, and credit and debt, right? So always keep telling yourself, you know what, yes, the credit card has this amount of money left, but it's simply not my money, right? It's simply not my money, right? I think those disciplines would definitely help any person in debt. But I mean, looking at economic situations around the world, it's hard for people not to fall into debt, right? And it all boils down to, self-control and self-management. Right. If you can tell yourself, you know what, this year's stuff I'm going to forego that golfing vacation or forego that particular weekly dinner I have, I'm going to make it a monthly dinner. You know what, it takes time. A lot of time people fall into debt because, they, like I said, they try to go to a level to which they actually can't. Okay. They think, you know what, I was seen at that restaurant on a weekly basis. If I begin to get seen on a monthly basis, you know what, it's not that good, right? Right. I mean, it's not quite, if many people are sometimes economically down and then they come up. It's just that trying to remain at a level that you can't afford to only makes it, it makes you distant from it, right? But if you live with the reality, you can bounce back much more faster.
Right. For me, whenever I open up my wallet and I see, okay, look, I have my credit card there, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to use my credit card. You probably know how to, like you said, it takes a few moments, a small time period for you to stop using that credit card or use it wisely. Do you have any advice on how you could stop using that?
Yes. Well, I'll tell you one thing now. You are not the only one actually who faces that issue, right? Especially, I mean, I end up traveling abroad a bit of an often time, right? And sometimes when I do that, you go abroad, you look at the shopping experiences that you get, you look at all the shopping streets that you find, and you sometimes you actually go crazy, to be very frank, from a very layman's term. But and like I said, you know what, I don't care, I have the credit cards, yes, why not buy? Well, one thing that I ended up doing was I made sure every time I go out, I only take one credit card. Right. Right. That's a start. Right. That's a start. You
mean a credit card with a limit or something?
Yeah, with a limit, definitely. Okay. I'm not that rich to be getting unlimited.
We're all going with limits.
So it's sometimes I would take only one credit card. Right. So if you have 3 credit cards, you take all 3 at the same time. You know what? Okay, nothing to worry. I have so much with me.